they're gonna have to excuse the road noise and stuff. I wanted to make this video outside because it does make a difference in how it sounds. But I wanted to make a video on using these right here. This is a Primos Rattle bag. I don't know what year they came out, but whatever year they first come out, I bought one. This right here is a Primos Grunt Wheeze. You've probably seen those calls before. It's the one I use for making deer vocals. I hardly ever use anything on this but the grunt. I know you can set them up for mature, young buck and all that stuff. I've always used the mature sound just because it seems like it's got a louder tone to it that deer would hear, and actually that's what I'm looking for, is a mature deer. So just excuse the noise. You may hear some road traffic and stuff coming by, but I just wanted to go through this sequence here and show you what I do whenever I'm rattling. So you know, first of all, it's another whole video and hours of talking about where to rattle and when and all that, but I just want to show how I do it. And so after I get set up in the tree, normally I'll set for a while. I always wait till I can see the best, and you know, early morning, anytime. I mean, it'll work throughout the day. I've rattled them in all day long. I've probably rattled in, I don't know, at least 100 deer, I guess. So you get to choose which ones you take, and it don't work every time, but when it does, it works well. Main thing is understanding the rut phase and the location they're in, but mainly what phase the deer are in at that time. So I'm up in a tree. I'll sit, you know, for a little while, usually letting the light get up to where I can see my furthest distance, although I'm usually in thick cover. But I'll sit around and just make sure and scan the air for, you know, 30 minutes. Sometimes I've had to wait several hours for fog to lift. But whenever I get ready to rattle, the first thing I'll do is hit my grunt call. And this is after I've scanned, because you're having to do a lot of scanning. These deer just slip in on you sometimes. But after I've done my scanning, I'll take my grunt call and just do some soft grunts to start with. Again, I've got this set up on the mature buck grunt, but just a short grunts just to get a deer's attention or a buck's attention in case he's in the area that I don't see him. Because like I said, it's real thick, and so if I can't see him, you know, maybe I can get him to move a little bit by hitting that short grunt. So I'll do something like this. You know, just to me it sounds loud out here, but in the woods it's really broke down a lot quieter. But just hit a short grunt, and don't make a sound. You know, just start scanning. But once you start calling, you want to make sure that you're set up looking downwind. I don't care what kind of obstacles in the way from downwind. Always look downwind. I've yet to call a deer in that didn't come from any other position except downwind. So after I've made that first initial grunt, you know, I may sit there a few minutes and, you know, say 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm done scanning the area again, don't see anything, and then I'll do another grunt. And I'll say it again. I'm just trying to ensure that I'm not missing a deer that's right here close, because once I start rattling, he's going to key in on me just like that. And any sound, even the grunt, they know exactly where you are. I mean, they can come straight to the tree that you're in, and they will do that most of the time. So after I sit there for a few minutes, you know, let 15 minutes go by now, and I'm still not seeing any deer. I'll let if the wind's blowing real bad, I'll let the wind calm to where my sound will travel further out in a radius instead of just downwind. So just sit there about 15 minutes after those grunts, and then on my initial rattle, I've watched a lot of videos and listened to a lot of deer fight. On the first sound that you're going to hear, usually a buck's standing around, you know, they're heading each other off and facing off with each other, but the first sound that they do, they're going to clash their antlers together. So you're going to probably hear a loud clash at that time, which it's not really loud unless you got a trained ear for it, but it'll be the loudest clash. So it'll start off with a clash, and then they may push each other around for a few minutes, and as they're pushing, they're not just clanging antlers together. You know, you just hear a tick, 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 you know. And just imagine what the deer are actually doing whenever they're fighting. You know, you got one pushing another one backwards, you know, and their heads locked together, and so you're probably just getting clicks. You know, it's not like this. You know, you don't hear that. And that's not realistic. But so you make that first initial clash, and I'll do something like this. And I'll pause because they're pushing each other right now. So just pause for 10, 15 seconds. Now they're just grinding horns. Pause, put where they're pushing again. And after I get on into the fight, I'll do some really bellowing grunts. I don't know if it helps. I mean, I've called deer in doing it. And actually put the grunt in your mouth while you're calling. The whole time I'm doing this, I'm also scanning the woods, slowly of course, but be scanning the whole time, and especially downwind. You can't miss out on the downwind. You just got to be looking downwind. But they can come from other directions, but they're going to initially come straight on into you. Even if they hear you from up here, they may walk into you, and you might can see them that way, but they're going to come around and come from downwind, because what they're doing then is coming down. They can't see where I'm at because I'm in a thicket. So they can't see on the ground, so they actually can't see the two bucks that they hear fighting. So what they're going to do next is come downwind, and they're going to come down there and see if they can't smell those deer. And so in that case, I'm using natural buck glands off a buck that I kill, or somebody else kill one. I'll collect it and salt it down so it'll be cured. Take a couple days to do that. But I also collect the urine out of the bucks that I get and put them in bottles and put them in the freezer. And when I need to scent that gland back up some, if it loses its smell, I can just dump some pee on there and it'll smell like that again. I also use another scent. It's I think it's made by Wildlife Research. It's Active Scrapes, what it's called. I've used other scents, but this one never let me down, so I stuck with it. I'm not saying the other ones don't work. It's just I like this one because it has worked for me. But it's a Wildlife Research Active Scrape. But I like to use that. I'm pretty sure if it's not synthetic, it's at least CWD qualified, whatever. But I like to use that scent as well as the gland, because when that mature buck's downwind down there, he's done smelt many deer. He knows what he's looking for or smelling for. He's smelling for two different bucks up there. So if you don't have those two different scents off of two different animals, you know, he's going to be a little fishy about it. But you know, you're going to have to be slick to fool this buck, because this is his home and you're trying to fool his nose, his ears, and his eyes. Well, where you're set up at in the thick stuff, you've already fooled his eyes because he can't see that location, although you're in the tree. But he can't see the ground, so that's very important when you're setting up for rattling. Either it needs to be a terrain feature where he can't see where that sound's coming from, or either so thick that he can't see. And I like the thick better. But I'm set up in the thick and I'm looking out into more clear, because you want to see as far as you can down, you know, downwind side of you. And some places you might get to see, you know, 200 yards on little spots here and there. But if you're in thickets, you're probably not going to see that far. Usually 50 to 75 is more realistic. But anyway, these bucks are going to come in, and they're going to come in usually charging. And they're going to come straight to, they know exactly where you're at. They're going to come straight right there upon you. And they're going to walk around right there smelling and looking, and you're just going to be sitting there watching them. And they don't see this fight, and they'll just ease off and walk back. Well, last year, the first time I rattled, I called in 5 bucks that morning. I had to sit and wait till about 8:30 for the fog to lift. I've called in. I didn't kill one while I was rattling last year because I didn't see one I wanted to kill. But that morning, the 5th deer that I called in was a 3.5-year-old 8-point. I passed on that deer, and he had a really, really beautiful rack. But it just, you know, I have a opportunity to let him go, and I'd love to see him again this year if he made it. So, and then he was on National Forest, so I hope I get to see that deer again. Maybe I can fool him again. But one of the biggest deer I've killed off of the National Forest was in that same location. And I actually didn't even get to the point of rattling that morning. I'd got in there about 7:30, just after daylight, and I had went down to one of his scrapes in the woods and poured out some of that active scrape. I hung up a deer gland that I'd previously got from someone or harvested, and found me a tree there. Went back upwind and kind of a crosswind from the scrape, and went to set up in this tree. And I no longer got my gun brought up to me, pulled up to me, that I saw him coming, and he smelt that scent that I just put in that scrape. And he's come by that morning and checked that. I never even rattled, but he came running up to me. Now that was a 5.5-year-old 8-point. But yeah, this rattling. Let me get back to the real part of this video. Once you start your initial rattling, I mean, you can go back and play the video over. Like I said, I got my grunt call in my mouth after I get this fight going. It's because I want to make some more realistic sounds. Most time I let this last. I mean, it sounds, you're making so much noise in the woods, you just want to stop right there because you feel like, you know, you've made so much noise. But if a buck gets in a fight, probably more realistically, it's going to be a good fight to last 5 minutes. They usually can already know who's dominant, and you know, it's not going to be an all-out fight, not unless it's just two big mature brutes that, you know, dominate an area or something. But usually it's going to be a short fight, so I usually keep my rattle sequence down to around maybe 5 minutes, and then I'll stop. But before I stop though, as a deer's fighting and he's pushing around, they done got tired and sweating and blowing, you know, and they're not doing really much pushing at this time. So one of them's already realizing he's getting his butt whooped, and then whenever they go to leave, they're going to break their antlers apart because they've already probably got them into a locked position where they're both comfortable about pushing around each other at this point. But as they go to separate, just imagine they got two racks separating, and these horns are locked like this. As they're separating, these tips on these horns are going to come apart, and they may rake across each other. So always at the very end of the last sequence on that, I'll make a light sound where it sounds like those two racks just slipped apart. Well, not that, but you know, just something light. Just make one sound. So after that, I'll wait, depending on how good the weather and the wind is. No wind, best case scenario, 30 minutes, 45 at the most. If the wind's blowing a lot and I don't think my sound's getting out a long ways, I may break it down to 20 or 30 minutes between rattle sequence, but most time about 30 to 45 minutes. And you can do that on one stand all day long because you don't know exactly where that buck's at or what time he's coming through the area. I'll have set in the morning before and started rattling at daylight at first light where I could see, and then rattle every 45 minutes all the way up to 1 o'clock, and he walks in and stitches, you know, comes straight to the tree I'm in. So it can work all day long. You don't have to just run and gun with type calling, although that would be pretty cool, but I don't like getting out in public land and messing up other people's hunt throughout the day by jumping everywhere. So I usually find a good place I know there's some good bucks in, and I'll just do it every 30 or 45 minutes. So I hope that explains how I do rattling. And like I said, I don't know how many bucks I've rattled in, but I've rattled in a lot. And most of the good ones that I've got, like I said, and some of the other things you might see, I'm a rut hunter, and I've killed most of my big deer during the rut, and at least over half of them I've rattled in. So it does work, but just learn all you can on the sounds. Watch videos on it. I really love the Primos guys. They taught me a lot by watching their videos and the calls and things that they were coming out with back when I was younger. But just check out some of their videos and the sounds, and maybe you can get out there and find you a buck. Rattle him in. So I'm glad y'all joined again today, and I appreciate y'all subscribing to the channel. So thanks again, and I'll post some more stuff on calling and deer hunting this year too. So thanks for joining.